Some places don't just hide stories, they absorb them. A campsite where families fracture into something unrecognizable. A forest where silence behaves like it's alive. And a man in a suit who forgets he was ever human until something in the dark reminds him. These are not accidents, they are patterns. And once you notice the pattern, it notices you back. Because out there, in the spaces between trees and memory, something is still working, still watching, still waiting for the next person to arrive exactly where they were always meant to break. And the worst part is, it doesn't need you to believe it to continue. It only needs you to stay long enough to hear the sound.
7 years ago, I was cast out. Not by fate, but by Erin. She didn't scream, she didn't curse. She simply ended it, her voice cold and final, like a hook'em whispered by something older than reason itself. And I deserved it. Back then, I was nothing but a hollow man drifting through life, feeding off her stability while offering nothing in return but empty promises and stale ambition. So I fled. Not to friends, not to family. I went to the one place that still felt like a ghost of something pure. The campsite Erin had loved since childhood. A place she once described as blessed, though now, in hindsight, I wonder if something far older than blessing lingered there. Something unseen, watching from behind the trees like a silent jinn waiting for its moment. Camping had never been my thing. I preferred noise, neon lights, and chaos. But Erin had shown me something different, something quieter, more primal. And like a fool chasing echoes, I returned there alone, dragging my regret behind me like a curse etched into my shadow. Deep down, I told myself this trip was proof I didn't need her, that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't bound to her like some desperate Ruth clinging to warmth. But that was a lie, because part of me believed, no, hoped, that Erin would appear, that she would step out from between the trees like a miracle, or perhaps like something summoned by longing alone. She never came. Instead, the forest answered with silence, thick, suffocating silence that pressed against my ears like whispered warnings in a forgotten tongue. The campsite hadn't changed. Same scattered tents, same distant flicker of campfires, same uneasy stillness between the trees. But something felt wrong, like the earth itself was watching, like unseen eyes lingered just beyond the reach of firelight. I set up my tent in our usual spot, the one Erin loved. The ground was uneven, slightly sloped, but it held memories, or perhaps it held something else entirely. That first night, I drank more than I should have. The wind whispered through the trees like ancient voices, murmuring forgotten prayers. At times, I could swear I heard something else layered beneath it. Faint, distorted sounds, like distant laughter, or perhaps the breath of something unseen, moving just out of sight. I told myself it was nothing. Just the alcohol, just loneliness, just the mind unraveling in the dark. But as the fire burned low and shadows stretched unnaturally across the forest floor, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Not truly. Not here. Not anymore. And somewhere, deep within that suffocating stillness, something ancient stirred. Silent, patient, watching, waiting.
Morning came like a reluctant mercy. The sun rose pale and distant, its light struggling to pierce through the thick canopy, as if even it feared what lingered beneath those trees. My head pounded from cheap beer and regret, and for a moment I almost convinced myself the unease from the night before had been nothing more than a drunken illusion. That lie didn't last long, because they arrived. I noticed the vehicle first, a worn-out SUV parked far too close to my tent. That alone was wrong. Out here, people respected distance. The forest demanded it. But this felt like an intrusion, like something had crossed an invisible boundary that shouldn't have been disturbed. Then they stepped out. A family. Or at least, something pretending to be one. The father moved stiffly, his posture rigid, like a puppet pulled by unseen strings. The mother followed, silent and distant, her expression unreadable, empty, almost hollow. And the children? God, the children were wrong. At first glance, they looked ordinary. A boy and a girl, maybe around 8 or 10. But there was something deeply unsettling in the way they moved, the way they laughed, like their joy didn't belong to them. I sat there in my fold-out chair, chewing on overcooked sausages, watching them with a growing sense of irritation and something darker beneath it. I wanted them gone. I wanted silence again. But silence was no longer mine to claim. As they unpacked, I caught snippets of the father's voice, sharp, nasal, and unnervingly high-pitched. The family does not behave like this. The family helps each other. The family does not act like animals. He repeated it over and over, like a broken incantation, like some twisted vicar meant to summon order into chaos. But it wasn't working, because the children ignored him completely. They ran around wildly, hurling insults at each other, words no child should know, let alone scream with such venom. Their voices carried through the trees like cursed echoes, sharp enough to make my skull ache. And the more they mocked each other, the more the father unraveled. His voice rose higher, more frantic, more desperate. Yet the children only laughed. Not normal laughter, something else, something that didn't sound entirely human. Meanwhile, the mother remained still. She sat in a cheap sun chair, watching everything unfold with an eerie calm, as if she were detached from it all, or perhaps bound to it in a way I couldn't understand. At one point, under the growing heat of the sun, she removed her top without a word and lay back, exposing herself to the light. It wasn't provocative. It was ritualistic, like an offering. And when she noticed me watching, she smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, but knowingly. A slow, deliberate curve of the lips, like she saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. The father noticed too. His head snapped in my direction, eyes burning with something between rage and fear. For a moment, I thought he might confront me. I almost wanted him to. I was drunk, bitter, and reckless. A fight would have been easier than whatever this was. But he didn't approach. He just stared, trembling slightly, like he was holding something back. Not anger, something worse. Then came the moment that made my stomach turn. The father grabbed his son's arm, hard, too hard. He yanked the boy toward him with a force that should have caused pain, tears, something. But the boy didn't cry. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he turned, spat a vile insult at his father, and ran off laughing, chasing his sister, as if nothing had happened. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a broken family. This was something else entirely. Something unnatural. Something that wore the shape of a family, but lacked whatever it is that makes people human. The forest felt heavier after that, the air thick, suffocating. And as I sat there, beer in hand, Watching them through narrowed eyes, a thought crept into my mind, quiet and cold as a whisper from the unseen. Maybe Erin hadn't been the one who cast me out. Maybe something else had been pulling me here all along. Something that wanted me to witness this, or worse, to become part of it.
By the time dusk bled into the forest, the air had changed. It wasn't just colder, it felt watched. The wind had picked up, dragging through the trees with a low, hollow moan like something ancient whispering in a forgotten dialect of fear. The sky dimmed under heavy clouds, swallowing the last traces of sunlight, and with it, any illusion of normalcy. The family remained, unmoving in their dysfunction, unchanging in their wrongness. They gathered around the fire pit, the same one Erin and I used countless times. But tonight, the flames didn't feel warm. They flickered unnaturally, stretching upward like reaching fingers, casting shadows that twisted too sharply, too alive. The children danced dangerously close to the fire, too close. Any normal kid would have stumbled, burned themselves, felt something, but they didn't. They moved with reckless abandon, circling the flames like it was some kind of ritual, their laughter echoing into the dark like a corrupted chant. The father's voice cracked as he screamed at them, threats, warnings, desperation. "I'll beat you if you don't stop. You hear me?" But his words carried no authority, no power, because they weren't afraid of him, not even a little. And the mother, she kept watching me, even as she sat beside the fire, even as her husband unraveled and her children spiraled into chaos. Her gaze kept drifting back to me, and every time our eyes met, she offered that same slow, deliberate smile. And once, God, I wish I could forget this, she winked, not playfully, not innocently, but like a silent invitation or a warning. Like she knew something I didn't, like she saw something around me, something I couldn't see myself. A chill ran through me then, not from the wind, but from something deeper, something instinctive, something primal. But I didn't leave. I should have. Any sane person would have packed up and walked into the darkness just to get away from them. But I was drunk, angry, and stupid. Perfect combination for bad decisions and worse consequences. Part of me even enjoyed it. The father's growing rage, the tension, the slow, suffocating collapse of whatever illusion this family had been pretending to uphold. It distracted me from Erin, from myself, from the al-hakika I didn't want to face. So I stayed, and I watched, as the fire grew stronger and the shadows grew longer. Eventually, the cold drove me into my tent. The wind howled louder now, slamming against the thin fabric like something trying to get in. I lay there with a flashlight and a book I wasn't really reading, trying to drown out the noise from outside. But I couldn't. The father's screaming continued. The children's laughter followed. Then the mother's voice, soft, almost inaudible, whispering something I couldn't make out. Together, their voices formed something unbearable, like a distorted chorus echoing through the night. Not conversation, not argument, something else, something ritualistic, something wrong. At some point, exhaustion dragged me to sleep, but it wasn't peaceful. My dreams were fractured, images of flickering firelight, hollow eyes, and something standing just beyond the edge of vision, watching, always watching. I woke suddenly, my throat dry, my body cold, and silence, complete silence. The kind that presses against your ears until it hurts, the kind that feels unnatural. I needed to pee. It sounds stupid, I know, but it pulled me out of the lingering fog of sleep and dread. I crawled out of my tent, the zipper sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. The campsite was dark, too dark. Even the embers of their fire had died. No movement, no sound, no sign of life. The forest stood frozen, like it was holding its breath. I walked a short distance into the trees, every step crunching louder than it should have. The darkness wrapped around me like a suffocating cloak, and for a moment, I had the overwhelming feeling that I had stepped into somewhere I wasn't meant to be, somewhere beyond the veil. When I returned to my tent, the cold hit me harder. It wasn't just the temperature, it was something else, something creeping beneath my skin. I climbed back inside, pulling the zipper shut with shaking hands, and just as I began to settle, it started again. But this time, the voices were different. Not angry, not chaotic, but terrified. A woman screaming, a child crying, and one sentence, clear as a curse, whispered into my ear. "What did you do to him?" My blood turned to ice. Then came a sharp crack, a heavy slap, and something that sounded like something breaking. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to stay still, to stay hidden, to not get involved. Because whatever was happening out there, it wasn't just a family argument anymore. It was something far darker, something that shouldn't exist under any sky, human or otherwise.
The screams didn't stop. They changed, twisted, evolved into something far worse than anger, something primal, something soaked in panic and accusation. The mother's voice cut through the night again, shrill and breaking, like a soul being torn from its body. "What did you do to him?" The words echo again and again, like a cursed invocation trapped in a loop. I lay frozen inside my tent, heart hammering like a drum summoning something unseen. Every instinct told me to stay hidden, to pretend I didn't exist, because whatever nightmare was unfolding out there, it wasn't meant for me. But I couldn't ignore it, not entirely. My hand fumbled for my phone. Weak signal, flickering bars. I dialed anyway, whispering to the operator that something was wrong, very wrong. My voice slurred slightly, betraying the alcohol still in my system. And that was enough. They didn't take me seriously. They told me to call a park ranger. A park ranger. As if this was some minor disturbance. As if what I was hearing wasn't something violent, something unnatural. I tried again, struggling with the sluggish internet, fingers trembling as I searched for a number. Outside, the chaos intensified. Voices overlapped, one of them male, high-pitched, almost indistinguishable from the father's earlier shrieks. Or maybe it wasn't the father anymore. Maybe it was the boy, or something wearing his voice. A thought crept into my mind then, cold, invasive, like a whisper from a djinn lurking just beyond the veil. Something has already happened. Something irreversible. Then, silence. Sudden, absolute, so abrupt it felt wrong, like the forest itself had been commanded to hush. I held my breath. Seconds passed, maybe minutes. Then I saw it. A glow, faint at first, then growing stronger, orange, flickering. Fire, but not from the pit. This light was different, more chaotic, more alive, like it was feeding on something. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay inside any longer. Fear be damned, I had to see. I crawled toward the zipper of my tent, every movement slow, deliberate, as if I could somehow delay whatever waited outside. My fingers hesitated at the edge, trembling. Then I pulled it open, just a little, just enough to see. And that's when everything shattered. The roar of an engine exploded through the silence. Blinding headlights tore through the darkness like twin eyes of something demonic, something furious. The SUV, charging straight at me, fast, too fast. For a split second, I couldn't move. My body locked, mind blank,
like prey caught in the gaze of a predator older than reason. Then, instinct took over. I ripped the tent open and threw myself sideways, hitting the ground hard as the vehicle tore through my campsite. Metal screamed, fabric shredded, everything I owned crushed beneath spinning wheels like it meant nothing. Because to them, it didn't. I rolled onto my back, gasping, watching in horror as the vehicle sped past, wild, uncontrolled, and then vanished into the forest beyond. Gone. Just like that. No hesitation, no remorse, only destruction. And something else. Something I couldn't quite name. The silence that followed was worse than the noise, because now I knew they hadn't just been fighting. They hadn't just been broken. That family, whatever they were, had crossed into something darker, something ritualistic, something soaked in blood and flame. And I had just barely escaped becoming part of it.
For a long moment, I couldn't move. I just lay there on the cold earth, chest heaving, ears ringing with the ghost of that engine's roar. The darkness closed in again, thick and suffocating, as if the forest itself was swallowing what had just happened, burying it beneath layers of silence. But the smell, that's what brought me back. Smoke, thick, bitter, wrong. I forced myself up, legs shaking, and turned toward where their campsite had been. Their tent was burning, not like a normal fire. This wasn't controlled. This wasn't accidental. The flames clawed upward violently, devouring the fabric like it was feeding, hungry, desperate. Shadows danced around it in unnatural shapes, stretching and bending like unseen figures caught between worlds. For a moment, I hesitated, because deep down something whispered, "Don't go closer. Leave. Forget." But I didn't. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe it was guilt, or maybe something wanted me to see. I grabbed what little water I had left, bottles half filled, and rushed forward, throwing dirt and earth onto the flames. It took effort, more than it should have. The fire resisted, hissing like something alive, something unwilling to die. But eventually, it weakened. The flames died down into glowing embers, and that's when I saw it. Or at least, I think I did. Something inside, a shape, dark, twisted, too still. For a split second, I was certain there was a body in there, curled, burned, unmoving. But then I blinked, and it was gone. Or maybe it had never been there at all. I don't know. To this day, I don't know. The sound of sirens broke through the night not long after. Real ones this time, not imagined, not distant echoes. Actual police arriving too late, as they always do in stories like this. I told them everything, or at least everything I could piece together. The family, the screaming, the fire, the car, the way it had come straight at me like I wasn't even human, just something to be erased. They listened, nodded, took notes, promised to follow up. They never did. No calls, no updates, nothing. Like the entire event had been swallowed by the same darkness that lived in those woods. No missing persons report, no news, no trace of that family. Just silence. Years passed, but it never really left me. Not the fire, not the screams, and definitely not the moment I saw that vehicle charging toward me through the dark, like a beast guided by something unseen, something intentional. I've replayed it 1,000 times. If the headlights had been off, I wouldn't have seen it. If they'd been brighter, they might have blinded me.
every variation ends the same way. Dead, crushed, gone. Sometimes I wonder, did they mean to hit me, or did they forget I was there? I tell myself it was the latter. It helps me sleep. Barely. I went to therapy. Still do. Because that night didn't just scare me. It changed something. Something deep. Something I can't fully explain. The memory always comes back the same way. Dark forest, cold air, and those headlights burning through the night like the eyes of a djinn hunting in silence. I never saw Erin again after that, and strangely, I stopped missing her, because whatever life we could have had, it would never have been as terrifying as what I witnessed in that forest. And sometimes, when the night is too quiet, I still hear it, that distant echo, that broken voice whispering through the darkness like a curse that was never meant to be heard. What did you do to him?
The upcoming events in this story have stolen the sleep of many. Where are you sitting? How terrified do you feel? Comment below. If you're new, follow now.
I used to think the wilderness was honest, that if you respected it, it would respect you back. I was wrong. This happened a few years after the incident with that family. I had taken a break from solo camping, but like all bad habits, I eventually returned. There's something addictive about isolation, the kind that strips away noise and leaves you alone with your own thoughts, or whatever else might be listening. This time, I went deeper, far deeper than I should have. The trail I chose wasn't official. No markings, no signs. Just a route I had mapped out myself through a dense stretch of forest, miles away from anything resembling civilization. It was supposed to be a 3-day trek to my usual hidden campsite. I made it 2 days in. That's when I started noticing the trees. At first, it didn't seem like much. Just a few trunks with small, round holes scattered across their bark. Clean holes. Too clean. Not natural. My first thought was hunters. Kids with guns, maybe. But something didn't add up. There were no splinters, no impact cracks, none of the usual alamats of bullet damage. These holes were precise, almost surgical, drilled. The deeper I went, the more I saw. Dozens of trees, then hundreds, each one marked the same way, like they had been chosen, selected for some purpose I couldn't understand. And the strangest part? Some of them were leaking sap. Thick, sticky, and it smelled wrong. Not like pine, not like anything natural. It was sour, rotting, like damp earth mixed with something sweet that had gone bad. The kind of smell that clings to your throat and refuses to leave, no matter how much fresh air you breathe. I crouched beside one of the trees, staring at the hole. Something pulled at me. Curiosity, maybe, or something darker. I reached out and touched the sap. It was warm. That alone should have been enough to make me stop. But it wasn't. Against every instinct, I brought my finger to my tongue and tasted it. Instant regret. The flavor was foul, bitter and tangy, like spoiled vegetation mixed with something metallic. Coated my mouth, and I had to spit it out immediately, wiping my tongue with my sleeve like I could erase the experience. No one would harvest this. No one would drink it. At least, no normal person would. That's when I heard it. A faint sound. Rhythmic. Metal against wood. Click,
turn, press, click, turn, press. I froze. Slowly, carefully, I moved toward the sound, keeping low, using the trees as cover. My heart pounded louder with every step, like it was warning me to turn back, to leave this place before I saw something I couldn't forget. But I kept going. And then I saw him. A man stood among the trees, his back turned to me. He was tall, unnaturally tall and broad, his body covered in thick hair, like some half-formed creature caught between human and beast. In his hands, a hand drill, old-fashioned, manual. He pressed it into the trunk of a tree and began turning. Click, turn, press. Click, turn, press. The sound echoed through the forest like a ritual, like a repeated incantation meant to awaken something buried beneath bark and root. When he finished drilling, he leaned forward and drank. Not from a container, not from a cup, directly from the tree. He pressed his mouth against the hole and sucked in the sap with a wet, greedy sound. His throat moved as he swallowed, over and over, like he couldn't get enough. Then he leaned back, let out a low, satisfied groan, and smacked his lips. I felt my stomach turn. The smell, the taste, the way he consumed it like it was something sacred or addictive. This wasn't survival. This wasn't normal. This was something else entirely. Something ritualistic. Something corrupted. For a moment, I wondered if I was looking at a man at all, or if I had stumbled upon something older, something tied to the forest itself, a servant of something unseen, a collector, a feeder, a thing whispered about in forgotten Arabic tales, a jinn bound to the roots of the earth, drawing sustenance from what lies beneath, feeding on what the trees remember. I should have left, quietly, slowly, without a sound. But fate, cruel, mocking fate, had other plans, because as I shifted my weight to step back, my foot came down on a dry branch, and it snapped, loud, sharp, like a signal. The man stopped instantly. Silence fell again, heavy, oppressive. Then he turned.
The moment he turned, I knew. This wasn't just a man. His eyes found me instantly, as if he had felt my presence long before he heard that branch snap. There was no confusion in his expression, no hesitation, only recognition, and something far worse. Hunger. Not the kind born of starvation, but something deeper, older, like a craving carved into his very existence. His pupils were too wide, swallowing what little light filtered through the trees, and his lips glistened with that foul sap, still dripping down his chin. For a second, we just stared at each other. The forest held its breath. Then he moved. Fast. Far too fast for someone his size. The drill slipped from his hand as he lunged forward, his massive frame crashing through the underbrush like a beast unleashed. His mouth opened, letting out a sound that wasn't quite a scream, more like a guttural roar layered with something wet and choking. I didn't wait. I ran. Branches whipped against my face as I tore through the trees, lungs burning, heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Behind me, I could hear him. Heavy footsteps pounding the earth, snapping twigs, tearing through foliage without slowing down. He wasn't cautious. He wasn't stalking. He was charging, like he didn't need stealth, like he knew I couldn't escape. For a moment, panic took over. My mind flooded with thoughts, irrational, desperate. What if he caught me? What if that drill? No, don't think. Just run. I pushed harder, forcing my legs to move faster than they ever had before. I veered off the path I had been following, plunging deeper into unfamiliar terrain. If I stayed on a predictable route, he might corner me. But if I got lost, at least I'd be alive. Behind me, his footsteps didn't fade. If anything, they got closer. How? He was bigger, slower. He should have been slower. But the distance between us didn't grow the way it should have. It felt like he was being pulled toward me, guided by something beyond sight or sound. Like I had been marked. Like the moment I tasted that sap, I became part of whatever this was. I risked a glance back. Big mistake. He was closer than I expected. Too close. His face twisted into something almost inhuman, teeth bared, lips peeled back, eyes locked on me with a terrifying intensity. His body moved wrong, his arms swinging too wide, his gait unnatural, like a puppet struggling to mimic human motion. And in his hand, the drill. He had picked it back up. He raised it high as he ran, the handle spinning wildly, catching what little light there was and reflecting it in erratic flashes. It looked less like a tool now, and more like a weapon. Or worse, a ritual instrument, something meant not just to harm, but to claim. I stumbled, just for a second, but it was enough. He let out a sharp, almost excited sound, like prey finally faltering. Adrenaline surged through me, drowning out the pain, the exhaustion, the terror. I forced myself back up and kept moving, ignoring the sharp protest in my ankle. Time blurred. Minutes stretched into something longer. My lungs screamed for air, my legs burned, and the forest around me became a maze of shadows and shifting light. Then, something changed. The trees. No more holes, no more sap. The smell faded, and just like that, his footsteps stopped. I didn't realize it at first. I kept running, expecting him to burst through the trees at any second. But when I finally slowed, when I dared to listen, nothing. No movement, no breathing, no pursuit. Just silence. I turned slowly, scanning the forest behind me. Empty. He was gone. Not hiding, not circling. Gone. Like he had never been there at all. But I knew better. Something had drawn a line in that forest, and I had crossed it. Or maybe he couldn't follow me beyond it. Either way, I didn't wait to find out. I kept moving. Hours passed before I felt even remotely safe. I pushed through unfamiliar terrain, ignoring hunger, thirst, exhaustion, everything except the need to get as far away from that place as possible. Eventually, I found something recognizable. A trail. Not mine, but a trail. And, more importantly, no holes in the trees, no smell, no signs of him. Still, the fear didn't leave, because deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't escaped. Not completely. That something of that place had followed me, clinging, watching, waiting.
I didn't stop moving, even after the forest grew quieter. Even after the trees returned to something resembling normal, I kept walking like something was still behind me. Because fear like that doesn't just disappear, it lingers like a curse whispered into your bones. Hours blurred together. My legs moved on instinct, my mind trapped somewhere between exhaustion and dread. The deeper I pushed away from that place, the more I convinced myself it was over, that I had escaped. But the forest has a way of lying. Eventually, I found my car, or at least what I thought was my way back to it. The path was familiar enough. The terrain, the incline, the scattered rocks, I recognized them. It gave me just enough confidence to believe I was safe. I wasn't, because that's when I saw them again. The trees. At first, just one, then two, then dozens, each marked with those same perfect holes, Clean, deliberate, unnatural. The bark around them looked fresh, recently pierced, and from those openings, sap still bled, thick, sticky, and glistening in the dim light like something alive. The smell hit me next, that same rotting sweetness, that same sickening tang, stronger now, fresher, like whatever had been done here had been done recently, very recently. My stomach dropped. No, that wasn't possible. I had left that area. I had run for hours, changed direction, crossed terrain that should have taken me far beyond whatever boundary that thing was tied to. So why was I seeing this again? A thought crept in, slow and cold. What if there was no boundary? What if it moved? Or worse, what if it was never tied to the place, but to me? The forest felt tighter now, closer, like the trees had shifted while I wasn't looking, closing in around me. Every shadow seemed heavier, every movement in my peripheral vision sharper. I turned in a slow circle. Nothing, just trees, endless trees, marked, watching, waiting. My breathing grew shallow. I needed to get out, now. I pushed forward again, faster this time, no longer caring about conserving energy or staying on any kind of path. The only goal was escape, pure, desperate escape. That's when I saw the clearing, a break in the trees, light filtering through, and beyond it, my car, parked exactly where I'd left it. Relief hit me like a wave so strong it nearly dropped me to my knees. I stumbled forward, half running, half limping, every step fueled by the need to put steel and glass between me and whatever nightmare I had just lived through. I reached the car, fumbled with the keys, dropped them, swore under my breath, picked them up again, unlocked the door, slid inside, and slammed it shut. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to slow my breathing. The interior felt too small, too quiet, but at least it was something solid, something real, something safe. Or so I thought. Because as I looked up, I saw it. Through the windshield, just beyond the edge of the clearing, a single tree, marked, fresh, sap still dripping from the hole like blood from a wound. And beneath it, something moved, a shadow shifting where there should have been none. I didn't wait. The engine roared to life, and I slammed my foot on the accelerator, tires spinning against the dirt before finally gripping. The car shot forward, leaving the clearing behind in a spray of dust and fear. I didn't look back, not once. I drove until the forest gave way to open road, until the trees thinned out and the sky widened above me, until I could breathe again. But even then, even miles away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't truly left that place, that something from it had followed. Not physically, not something I could see, but something else, something deeper. Like a whisper lodged inside my mind, like the taste of that sap that still clung faintly to my tongue, no matter how many times I tried to forget it. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I swear I can smell it again. That same rot, that same sweetness. And I wonder if one day I'll hear it again. Click, turn, press.
I thought distance would be enough. Miles of asphalt, noise, civilization, light. But some things don't stay in the forest. Some things stay in you. The first night back, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. The way he turned, the way his eyes locked onto me like I wasn't just a stranger, but something chosen. I kept hearing that sound, too, over and over again, like it had carved itself into my skull. Click, turn, press. I told myself it was trauma,
adrenaline, my brain trying to process something extreme. But then came the smell. Faint at first, so faint I almost ignored it. That same rotting sweetness creeping into my room like something had slipped in unnoticed. I checked the windows, closed, the door, locked. Nothing, no source. Still the smell lingered. And then it got stronger. Not everywhere, just near me, on my hands. I scrubbed them raw in the sink, soap foaming over my skin again and again until it burned. But even after I dried them, even after I stepped away, I could still smell it. That sap, that filth, that thing I had tasted. A thought crept in then, quiet and suffocating. You shouldn't have done that. You weren't meant to taste it. The days that followed didn't help. I tried to go back to normal life, work, food, sleep, but something was off. Food tasted dull. Water tasted wrong, like my senses had shifted, recalibrated to something unnatural. And sometimes, only sometimes, I would catch myself craving that taste again, that bitter metallic tang. The one that made me gag the first time. Now it lingered in my memory differently. Not appealing, but familiar. That scared me more than anything, because fear fades, but familiarity, that stays. One night I woke up suddenly. No sound, no nightmare, just awareness, like something had nudged me awake. My room was dark. Too dark, the kind of darkness that feels thicker than it should be, like it's pressing against your eyes instead of simply existing. And that's when I heard it. Soft, faint, but unmistakable. Click. I froze, my breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen. Silence. Then, turn. My heart started pounding. No, that wasn't possible. I lived alone. There was no one else in the apartment. Nothing that could make that sound. And yet, press. It came again, clearer this time, closer, not outside, not down the hall, inside the room. I slowly turned my head toward the sound. The window. The curtain moved slightly, though there was no wind. And behind it, a shape, tall, still, watching. Couldn't see details, only the outline. Broad shoulders, head tilted slightly like it was observing me the same way it had in the forest. My body locked. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe properly. The shape didn't move at all. It just stood there, silent, patient. Then, it was gone. The curtain stilled. The room returned to normal darkness, and the sound stopped. I didn't sleep the rest of that night, didn't even blink, just sat there staring at the window, waiting for it to come back. It didn't, but something changed after that, because now I knew this wasn't over. It hadn't ended in the forest, and whatever I had encountered, whatever that man was, whatever that sap meant, it had marked me, and it was still watching, still waiting for something.
Time passed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. On the surface, everything returned to normal. I went back to work, I spoke to people, I laughed when I had to. From the outside, I was just another person who had taken a strange, unsettling trip into the wilderness. But inside, something had changed. Subtly at first, then undeniably. The smell never fully left. It faded, yes, but every now and then, without warning, it would return. A faint trace of that same rotting sweetness would slip into the air around me, like something unseen brushing past. No source, no explanation, just presence. And the dreams, they got worse. Not vivid, not dramatic, just repetitive. Endless trees, endless silence, and holes. Thousands of them, each one staring back at me like an eye carved into bark, watching, waiting. And some of those dreams, I wasn't running anymore. I was standing still, facing a tree, holding something in my hand, a drill, turning it slowly. Click, turn, press, over and over again, until something inside the tree answered. I would wake up before I could see what, but I always woke with the same feeling that I had been taught something I wasn't supposed to learn. One morning, I found dirt under my fingernails. Not a little, not from some half-remembered task. Deep, packed in, as if I had been digging. I live in an apartment. There was nowhere for that kind of dirt to come from. I washed it off, tried not to think about it, tried to ignore the quiet voice in the back of my mind whispering, "You went somewhere. You just don't remember." After that, I started locking everything. Doors, windows, even the bathroom when I showered. Not because I thought something would break in, but because I wasn't sure what might already be inside. And then came the last incident, the one that made me stop questioning and start accepting. I was at work, normal day, normal people, normal noise. And then I smelled it again. Strong, stronger than it had ever been. So strong it made my stomach twist. Others noticed it too. Someone complained about a strange odor. Another joked about something rotting in the walls. They didn't understand, but I did. Because when I looked down at my hands, they were trembling. And for a split second, just a second, I saw it. Sap, thick, dark, coating my fingers, dripping slowly like it had just been drawn from something alive. I blinked. It was gone. My hands were clean, but the feeling didn't leave. That texture, that harara, like something had just been placed there and then taken away. That was the moment I realized the truth. Whatever lives out there, whatever drinks from those trees, whatever uses that ritual, it doesn't just stay in the forest. It spreads through contact, through taste, through memory, and maybe through something even deeper, something tied to intention, to curiosity, to that one fatal mistake, reaching out, touching, tasting. I never went back, never will. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is silent, I hear it again, faint, distant, but closer than it should be. Click, turn, press, and I wonder if one day I'll wake up not in my bed, but standing in that forest again, drill in hand, tree in front of me,
and no memory of how I got there. Because some places, some things, once they mark you, they don't let go.
The upcoming events in this story have stolen the sleep of many. Where are you sitting? How terrified do you feel? Comment below. If you're new, follow now. I used to believe the forest was the most dangerous place a man could get lost in. Then I met the man in the suit. It happened years ago during one of my longer solo hikes, one of those reckless trips I used to take when I still thought survival was just a skill you could master, like math or driving. I was deep enough in the wilderness that my phone had stopped pretending it could find signal. No trails, no markers, just me, my pack, and a silence that felt intentional. The first sign something was wrong wasn't the man. It was the absence of sound. Birds gone, wind muted. Even the insects had stopped speaking, as if the forest itself had suddenly decided to listen instead. I remember standing near a small clearing when I saw him. At first, I thought I was hallucinating because he looked completely out of place. A man in a business suit, not torn, not dirty in the way you'd expect from someone lost for days. It was wrinkled, yes, but still intact, like he had stepped out of an office building and simply continued walking until reality stopped making sense. He stood in the middle of nowhere, staring at the ground, not moving, not calling for help, just standing, as if waiting for instructions from something unseen. I called out to him. No response. I approached slowly, instinct kicking in. My mind was already running through possibilities. Lost hiker, mental breakdown, dehydration, maybe even drugs. But none of those explanations felt right, because the closer I got, the more wrong he looked. His shoes were clean, too clean for this terrain. No mud, no scratches, like he had never truly walked here. I stopped a few feet away. "Hey," I said, "you okay?" Silence. Then he slowly lifted his head and looked at me. His eyes didn't focus, not properly. They drifted slightly, like they were trying to remember how seeing worked. And then he spoke. Not a question, not a greeting, just a sentence that didn't belong in any conversation I had ever had. "Where am I supposed to be?" I frowned. "You're in the woods. You're lost." He blinked. Once, twice, like the concept didn't connect. Then he looked down at his hands, turning them slightly, studying them as if they belonged to someone else. He said slowly, "I was leaving work. I think I was leaving work." His voice had no certainty in it, no memory behind it, just repetition, like a file being played without understanding the language. I asked him his name. He paused, long enough that the silence became uncomfortable. Then he said, "I don't know." That should have been the end of it, a simple case of disorientation, but it wasn't. Because when I checked my map later, the nearest road was days away, and this man, this perfectly dressed, neatly composed man, was standing exactly where no one should be able to arrive without preparation, supplies, or reason. And yet, he had none of those things. No water, no gear, no panic, just confusion, and something worse beneath it. A quiet sense that he wasn't surprised to be lost, only uncertain of what had placed him there. That night, I made a decision I still can't fully explain. I let him come with me.
He didn't question my offer. That alone should have warned me. Most lost people, real, panicked, disoriented people, ask 100 things. Where are we? How far is help? Do you have food, phone, a way out? But he didn't ask anything. He simply followed, step by step, like obedience was already installed inside him. We set up camp before nightfall near a shallow stream. I offered him water and a few spare supplies. He accepted everything without hesitation, but also without urgency, like he was performing actions he had seen someone else do, not choices he understood. The fire crackled between us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he said, almost casually, "I think I had a life before this." I glanced at him. "You think?" He stared at the flames. "It feels distant, like it belongs to someone else." There was something unsettling about the way he said it. Not sadness, not confusion, detachment, as if his identity had been peeled away layer by layer until only the shape of a person remained. I asked him what the last thing he remembered was. He blinked slowly, then answered, "Leaving a building." "What kind of building?" He hesitated. "A tall one." That was it. No city, no street, no name, just a vague architectural memory floating in an empty mind. The forest around us felt quieter than usual that night. Even the wind seemed careful, like it didn't want to interrupt. I tried to rationalize it. Amnesia, trauma, chemical exposure, anything. But none of it explained how a man in a full business suit could appear so far into the wilderness without a trace of how he got there. At some point, I fell asleep. Not intentionally, just exhaustion winning. When I woke, the fire had nearly died. The man was still sitting where I left him. But something had changed. He wasn't looking at the fire anymore. He was looking at me. Not directly at my face, at my chest, like he was studying something I couldn't see. "Did you hear it?" he asked quietly. I sat up immediately. "What?" He tilted his head slightly. "The clicking." My stomach tightened. "No," I said. "There's nothing out here." He frowned, not in confusion, in disagreement. "It's always here," he whispered, "when it gets quiet enough." I stood up slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing moved, no sound, just that same unnatural silence pressing in again, the kind that feels less like absence and more like suppression, like something is holding the world still. "You're hearing things," I told him. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it, because I remembered something. Earlier that night, right before I slept, a sound I had dismissed, faint, mechanical, almost like click. My breath caught. I turned back toward him. He was no longer sitting relaxed. Now he looked alert, focused, like he was waiting for confirmation of something only he could sense. And then he said something that made my skin go cold. "It follows people who listen too long." I took a step back. "Listen to what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly reached into his suit pocket and pulled out something I hadn't seen before. A small object, metal, old, a hand drill.
The moment I saw the drill, something in my stomach tightened like a knot pulled too fast. It didn't belong here. Not in this forest, not in this conversation, not in reality as I understood it. The man held it gently, almost reverently, like it wasn't a tool, but something ceremonial. The metal looked old, worn at the edges, stained in places that didn't look like rust, more like dried residue. He didn't point it at me. He didn't threaten me. He just held it, as if it was part of him, remembering what he was supposed to be. "What is that?" I asked, my voice lower than I intended. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned it slowly in his hands. Then, click. The sound wasn't loud. It wasn't even sharp, but it cut through the forest like a violation.
Every bird that wasn't there, every insect that wasn't speaking, every breath of wind that wasn't moving, it all felt like it flinched at once. I stepped back. "What did you do?" I said. He looked up at me, and for the first time, there was something behind his eyes. Not memory, not clarity, recognition. "I think," he said slowly, "I used to make holes." My throat went dry. "Holes in what?" He looked down at the drill again. Things that were already alive. A coldness spread through my chest. The fire beside us crackled weakly, as if it was losing strength just listening to this conversation. The forest felt closer now, not physically, but attentively, like it had leaned in. I tried to steady my breathing. "You're confused," I said. "You're lost. You probably hit your head or—" He shook his head once, slow, certain. "No," he said. "I don't think I got lost." That made me stop. He continued, voice quieter now. "I think I was placed." A long silence followed. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that feels like something is waiting for permission. I glanced toward the trees. Nothing moved, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was listening through them. The man stood up suddenly, not aggressively, just decisively, like a thought had completed itself inside him. "We shouldn't stay here," he said. I frowned. "That's the first thing you said that makes sense." But he didn't smile. He looked serious, almost afraid, for the first time. We broke camp quickly, too quickly, like both of us wanted to leave before the forest had time to object. As we walked, I noticed something strange. The deeper we went, the quieter he became. Not less talkative, less present, like every step forward was stripping something away from him again. After a while, he stopped walking entirely. I turned back. "What now?" He was staring at a tree. Not just any tree, one with a faint scar on its bark. A small, perfect hole, fresh, dark sap oozing from it slowly. My breath caught. No, not here, not again. The man took a step closer to it. I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I said sharply. He didn't resist, but he also didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the hole, like it was calling him, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then he spoke, very softly. "I think I've seen this before." My grip loosened slightly. "What do you mean?" He swallowed, and for the first time, his voice cracked. "I think I've done this before." A beat of silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the forest, a sound, faint, mechanical. Click. The man flinched, hard, like something inside him had been struck. His hand tightened around the drill, and without warning, he started walking toward the tree. I pulled him back, hard. "Stop," I said sharply. "You don't know what you're doing." But he didn't react like someone being restrained. He reacted like someone being interrupted mid-recognition. His head turned slowly toward me, and for a second, I saw something terrifying in his expression. Not anger, not confusion, but loss, like I had just pulled him away from the edge of remembering something he wasn't meant to recover. "I have to see it," he whispered. "No," I snapped. "You don't have to do anything." The forest around us felt heavier again. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was aware. The tree stood there between us like an accusation, its drilled hole leaking that same unnatural sap, dark and glistening, smelling of decay and something almost sweet beneath it. The man stared at it like it was speaking to him, and then he said something that made my skin crawl.
I think I've heard it breathing before. My grip loosened without me realizing. What? I asked. He didn't look at me. Not the forest, he said. Something under it. A cold ripple went through my spine. The wind stopped completely. Even the leaves froze mid-motion. The man stepped forward again, slower this time. I didn't stop him. Something in me had shifted, fear mixed with a sick kind of curiosity I didn't want to admit. He reached the tree, placed his hand on the bark, and the moment he touched it, he flinched violently, like an electric shock had passed through him. His breath hitched, his eyes widened, and then memory hit him. Not like a thought, like a flood. His body trembled as if something inside him was being rewritten in real time. His grip tightened around the drill so hard, his knuckles turned pale. "I remember," he whispered. I stepped closer despite myself. "What do you remember?" He shook his head slowly, like he was trying to reject it, but it was already there. I wasn't lost. I was returning. My stomach dropped. From where? He turned toward me now, and this time he looked fully awake, fully present, fully terrified. To the place beneath the trees where they teach you how to make them speak. A distant sound echoed through the forest again. Click. But this time, it wasn't coming from anywhere I could locate. It felt like it was inside the ground, inside the bark, inside us. The man stepped back from the tree like it had burned him. "I drilled them," he said quickly now, words spilling out. "I drilled them to open them, to listen, to—" He stopped suddenly, his face twisted, like something inside him was resisting the sentence, like speaking it fully would make it real. I backed away instinctively. "What are you talking about?" He looked at me, and for the first time, he smiled, but it wasn't his. It didn't belong to him. "I think I was never the one holding the drill," he said softly. A pause. Then, it was holding me. The sap on the tree began to drip faster, thicker, as if reacting, as if pleased, and somewhere far beneath the soil, something answered.
I took a step back the moment he said it. The drill. It wasn't just in his hand anymore. It looked heavier now, like it had gained meaning, like it was no longer a tool, but a permission. The man stood very still, too still. His breathing had slowed, not in calmness, but in surrender. And the smile on his face, it wasn't warmth, it was recognition, like something inside him had finally found its way home. "I don't want to remember this," he whispered, but his hand tightened around the drill anyway. The tree behind him began to change. The hole, small and precise, darkened as if it was deepening inward instead of outward. The sap no longer dripped randomly. It moved with intention, crawling down the bark in thin, unnatural lines, like veins waking up. The forest itself felt wrong now, not silent, listening. I turned my head slowly. Every tree around us now had marks, some old, some fresh, all of them with holes, all of them facing inward toward us. No wind, no birds, no escape. The man suddenly spoke again, faster now, like panic breaking through the possession. "They said the forest remembers through impact," he said. "Every hole is a word, every drill is a sentence." I shook my head. "That's not real." He looked at me sharply. "Then explain why it answers." A low sound rolled through the ground beneath us, not loud, not distant, but present, like something enormous shifting in sleep.
The soil near the tree cracked slightly, and from it came the faintest repetition. Click, click, click. The man staggered back. His eyes widened again, but not with fear this time, with understanding. "No," he whispered. "It's not me remembering." He looked at the drill, then at me, and his voice broke. "It's using me to continue." The realization hit like a physical collapse. I stepped forward instinctively. "Drop it," I said, "now." But he didn't, because the drill wasn't just in his hand anymore. It was aligned, like it always belonged there. His arm began to move on its own, slowly, deliberately, toward the tree. I grabbed his wrist, struggled, but it was like trying to stop something heavier than muscle, like resisting a decision that had already been made somewhere else. The drill touched the bark, and the forest inhaled. Everything went still. Not quiet. Paused. Even my heartbeat felt delayed, like it didn't know whether it was allowed to continue. The man spoke one last time, and his voice was no longer his. "It's not a place," he said softly. "It's a system." The drill turned and began to bite into the tree. Wood cracked. Sap burst outward like something bleeding that was never supposed to be injured. The hole widened, deepened, and from inside it, something looked back. Not an eye, not a face, just awareness, ancient, patient, endless. The man's body jerked once, then went still. The drill fell from his hand and hit the ground with a dull metallic sound, and for a brief moment, everything stopped. The forest returned to silence. Not peace, not calm, just containment. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, staring at the tree that now had a wound too deep to be natural. The man was gone, not physically, but like something had stepped out of him and left the rest behind. Then, very softly, from every tree around me at once, click. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. And I never went into that forest again. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet enough to hear thinking itself, I still hear it. Not in the distance, not outside, but like something remembering that I once stood close enough to understand it and chose to run instead.
We end tonight's horrifying story right here. But remember, darkness reveals secrets daylight never can. Stay tuned for more terrifying encounters if you dare to.